Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today. Chapter 790, Obelisk's Puzzle. Just like with the handprint, these locks were made out of sewed ability power threads that were engraved onto the very surface of the obelisk. The leftmost lock was the only one glowing right now. The other two were dormant, not giving any light at all. What's with this lock? Michael asked himself. It was pulsating with light, like it was breathing. But then, as the seconds passed, he noticed that the frequency of pulses were becoming faster and faster. Not only that, but it was accompanied by a high-pitched ticking sound as if it was a timer. It wasn't long before the first lock was about to reach its end, releasing a bright light accompanied by a high-pitched noise as if a bomb was about to go off. Michael immediately retreated back and conjured a protected wall around him, expecting an explosion to go off. But a few seconds later, nothing happened. He peeked out of the wall and saw that the leftmost lock on the obelisk was still glowing with light, but it was no longer pulsating. It was static. But that wasn't the only thing different. He looked up and saw that just beside the upside-down balcony, there was a spherical object floating in the black skies. It was made out of some kind of dark gray stone the size of a watermelon. It was just floating in the skies, not giving off any sense of danger at all. At least it's not a bomb. Just like before, he used his drone for reconnaissance. He piloted it to come closer to the spherical object and observe it in its entirety. The first thing he noticed was the complete lack of power inside it. Unlike the obelisk, there weren't any ability power threads anywhere on its surface. Instead, there was a simple carving of what looked like an image of a leaf inscribed on the top. What is this supposed to do? He looked around the island and found nothing else of interest. This spherical object was the only thing that had changed after the obelisk was activated. He also manifested a clone to touch the object, to no avail. And after a few minutes of thinking, he decided to touch it himself. But still, there was no reaction. It took him 30 minutes of cluelessly fumbling around as he tried to. Harbinger, what kind of test is this? He was prepared to fight off whatever alien-like monster that the obelisk threw at him. But instead, it just gave him a stone ball that did absolutely nothing. The worst part was that the obelisk gave him no clue as to what he was supposed to do. At least before, it gave him the courtesy of putting arrows at the handprints as a clue. Perhaps it is asking you to destroy the spherical object, ChatJK5 suggested. The designer would have conjured stairs if they wanted someone to touch the spherical object. And after numerous futile attempts earlier, it is safe to assume that they want you to destroy it. Maybe you're right. He raised his hand, his index finger pointing at the spherical object. His strongest attack was his Unity gun. All 8 elements gathered at his hand, combining to create a bright white light that emanated a destructive power. A second later, an instantaneous light beam shot off his finger and hit the spherical object right in the middle. Yet, it still floated there unbothered. The Unity gun didn't even leave a single scratch. The spherical object was just hit by one of the most destructive power anyone had ever seen, yet it still remained intact. Michael couldn't believe it. What the hell is this thing made out of? Now, he was completely clueless on how to destroy this thing. That was his strongest attack. The only other technique he could think of was his quantum slash, but that required an enormous amount of energy, 3 full batteries. He simply didn't have that much on hand. Wait, what was that inscription again? He piloted his drone to move atop the spherical object, and there, he saw the image of a leaf carved onto its surface. What if this isn't a leaf? What if it means earth mana? It was a long shot, but he decided to try it anyway. After his Unity gun proved useless, he knew that he had to try any idea that came his way. He raised his hand, beckoning all the earth mana in the air towards him. Invisible green blobs of light clumped atop his palms, manifesting as pure earth energy. This was the purest magic he could conjure. With the ball of earth mana stuck firmly above his palms, he then turned and pointed it at the spherical object. With a single thought, pure earth magic shot outwards at a leisurely speed. It was slower than an arrow but faster than a throw. It hit the spherical object squarely on its surface, with the earth mana shattering into fragments that covered the entirety of the object. A few seconds later, the object emanated a neon green light, Then, it began to shake violently until it exploded into a million pieces that dispersed into the wind. All that was left was a green mote of light that floated where the spherical object was placed before. Ting! Michael turned around and saw one part of the first lock suddenly glow green, followed by a high-pitched noise as if a bell was struck right in its sweet spot. Soon after, another spherical object manifested out of the fragments that the previous one. This time, it was positioned a few meters opposite the green mote of light. I think I know how to solve this puzzle. He piloted his drone to fly atop the new spherical object and saw the shape sculpted on its surface. This time, it was in the shape of a flame. Without even thinking about it, Michael conjured pure fire mana in his palms, the same way he did with the pure earth magic. He pointed the red clump of pure fire magic and shot it towards the spherical object. It hit the object's surface and shattered into individual fire mana that surrounded the object in its entirety. Struck with this energy, the object began glowing with a red light before starting to violently shake. And just like before, the spherical object exploded into a million pieces, leaving behind a small blob of red light in its place. "I knew it!" he exclaimed. After the explosion, a satisfying ding echoed from the obelisk before the next part of the first lock glowed red. This was followed by the creation of a new spherical object in the black sky. "This puzzle is testing my ability to use all 8 elements," he concluded. Those spherical objects were invulnerable to any and all attacks, except for a single specific mana element that was inscribed on top of its surface. He'd been so used to using his Unity gun and his ability powers as his main source of attack that he completely neglected to think about his magic. With the puzzle solved, all that's left was to destroy 6 more spherical objects to complete the first lock. Chapter 791. Unity Test. Just as he predicted, each of the spherical objects could only be destroyed by a specific mana. After figuring this out, the rest became extremely easy. It wasn't long before the final spherical object appeared in the skies. This time, it had the image of a ray of light inscribed onto its surface. With a simple light magic, Michael finally destroyed the last spherical object in the black skies. All that's left from its debris was a mote of white light that joined the other motes of lights around it. They were arranged in a circle with the obelisk at the center. Curiously enough, the motes of light perfectly coincided with the rays of light that came out from the obelisk when he first activated it. What kind of material is that? Even after finishing the test, Michael still couldn't get his mind off of that strange spherical object. He wanted to know what it was made out of. The fact that it could withstand Unity made it extremely interesting to him. If it could withstand Unity, then it was basically invulnerable to all damage. No one in the world could destroy it. But just as he was having this thought, the sound of the lock shattering echoed out into the island. Finally, the first lock was completed, having all its parts illuminated by the 8 elements. This would have been cause for celebration, but suddenly, the different parts of the lock began to move closer and closer together until finally, it smashed together, forming a single part. A shockwave emanated from the obelisk, making Michael wary of his surroundings. Something was coming. His intuition proved to be right as a mysterious form of light suddenly shot out from the obelisk's tip, landing right in front of Michael. It stood on a pair of feet with 2 hands at its side. This figure was a faceless humanoid. Michael's eyes widened as he subconsciously went on a defensive stance. It wasn't the fact that he was facing a humanoid. It was because of what it was made out of. This mysterious figure was made out of pure prismatic light, its entire body shining in the different colors of the 8 elements. It was made out of Unity. It didn't wield Unity like he did. It was Unity itself. Michael couldn't believe his eyes. He was facing an enemy unlike anything he had ever faced before. He didn't even think that this was possible. The only magic he could conjure with Unity was his Unity gun, which was just a basic beam that shot in a straight line. That was the only thing he could create with Unity. And when he tried to experiment with other uses, they all ended up as a massive failure. Combining all 8 elements was a delicate procedure. A single mistake could cause an explosion that could level entire cities. Unity gun was a spell that harvested that power into a controlled explosion, much like how real guns worked. Because of this, he thought that Unity was a spell that cannot be contained. It was a volatile explosion that needed to be released as soon as possible. Yet now, he was looking at a complete reversal of everything he ever thought was possible. This Unity creature acted like a real object. It felt solid, which was something that contradicted everything Unity was supposed to be. It was supposed to be a destructive power, something that wrecked anything it touched. Despite this, the Unity creature was standing on solid footing instead of falling through to the bottom. It should have been burning through the very ground it stood on, yet the soil underneath its feet remained intact. How was this creature created? It was only now did it dawn on him that the creator of this space was way beyond him in his current stage. Not only were they stronger, but they seemed to know everything about the world while he still remained clueless. Faced with such a large gap in knowledge, most people would feel helpless. But not Michael. There was just a single thought forming in his head. ChatJK5, can we analyze this creature? He wanted to see if he could replicate it. But while he was in the middle of this thought, the Unity creature suddenly disappeared from his sight. Michael instinctively ran backwards. But it was too late. The Unity creature reappeared right in front of him, its two arms raised above its head. Then it slammed it towards his chest. His absolute Unity defense, immediately activated as if felt a foreign force trying to hurt his physical body. This defense of his had stood against incredibly strong attacks, even those from a first-stage nascent spirit magnetic for a brief second. Yet as soon as the Unity creature's hands touched it, Michael's prismatic shield immediately shattered into pieces. At the very last second, Michael raised his hand as he felt an intense force slam him down on his back. The force knocked the wind out of his chest, blood following soon after. A few of his ribs were immediately broken, causing some of his organs to be pierced alongside it. With the Unity creature sitting on top of him, he knew that he was in an extremely vulnerable position. He activated his shadow teleportation skill to escape. A dark shadow began to creep from under him, quickly covering his entire body. But before it could even finish its formation, the Unity creature raised its arm and slammed it into Michael's body. Immediately, the shadow forming on Michael's arms sizzled before disintegrating into mist. With just a single attack, his teleportation skill was destroyed. But that wasn't enough. The Unity creature raised its hands again and began hammering Michael with slam after slam. Michael had his arms raised the entire time to protect his body and his head. But the force was too much. His skin began disintegrating as well, with his body's natural mana getting destroyed with each slam. Not only that, but the bones in his forearms began to break, cracks spreading around its surface. And with the last slam, his guard was broken. The Unity creature hammered straight into his chest again, further causing massive internal damage. He had never been hurt this bad before. The pain was excruciating. Painless protocol enacted, ChatJK5 announced. And suddenly, the severe blunt trauma in his chest disappeared. The pain was no longer clouding his mind, allowing him to think much more clearly than before. Immediately, he reached into his drone and piloted it himself. With a single command, the two barrels on the drone's underside adjusted themselves and pointed straight towards the Unity creature. It began to glow with a prismatic power before an instantaneous beam shot straight into its target. It hit the Unity creature's shoulder, making it recoil backwards in pain. It jumped back, its headless face staring at the drone above it. This finally gave Michael the break he needed. He immediately jumped backwards, conjuring a simple healing spell as he did so. He sucked in all of the light mana in the air, forcing them all to cover all the injuries in his body. Bathed with this magic, his shattered bones began mending and his pierced organs began to regrow its holes. Chapter 792, Unity v Unity. In a few seconds, the near-fatal injuries that plagued him were healed back to the way it was before. Michael could finally take a big breath, his lungs no longer punctured. He looked at the Unity creature and found it clutching its injured shoulder. It was hurt. Just then, the Unity creature suddenly disappeared, before reappearing right in front of his drone high up in the air. Its hands were outstretched, trying to grab at the flying weapon that caused it to be injured. Michael immediately piloted the drone, using one of its features to rapidly eject one of his switches, intending to pause the Unity creature's momentum. A spring-loaded mechanism launched the switch directly in the creature's chest, firmly attaching to it and sending back a signal towards Michael's chest. An ability power thread spooled out of his Godforge pieces and wrapped around the switch, before the switch released a newly processed thread towards the Unity creature's entire body like a cocoon. The cocoon glowed with power, trying to alter reality and stop the Unity creature's momentum entirely. But as his ability was getting activated, the Unity creature spread his hands apart and broke through the cocoon, the threads getting burned into nothing. The switch fell out of the Unity creature's chest, unable to even activate for a single instant. The creature grabbed onto the drone, grasping it in its Unity-filled hands. The drone's frame suddenly began sizzling as Unity began to break down its very molecular structure. Michael's drone vision began to shake, static crowding the image. If the Unity creature continued to hold the drone in its hands, it would do irreparable damage to the mithril artifact. Michael immediately raised his own hand, pointed it at the Unity creature, and fired off a shot of Unity gun. A beam of prismatic light shot from his index finger right towards the Unity creature's back, making it lurch forward in pain and allowing the drone to escape from its grasp. The drone flew towards Michael, keeping close to him. So only Unity can hurt Unity. Looks like this test is designed to see if I can use Unity. Just like with the previous test, there was only one win condition for him to succeed. It was the 8 elements before, but now it was the combination of all of them, Unity. With the Unity creature hurt, it looked back at Michael, its faceless head staring at him. Michael kept his hand up, index finger already lighting up as he loaded up another shot of Unity gun. And beside him, his drone's barrels lit up with a similar light. Michael didn't wait for the Unity creature to move and fired both shots of Unity gun. The beams traveled almost instantaneously towards the Unity creature, both shots aimed at the head. But in that same instant, the Unity creature's figure blurred as it disappeared and reappeared a few meters away from the shots. I won't be able to shoot it as easily as before, Michael realized. Since it's also made out of Unity, the Unity gun's instantaneous shot would almost look as slow as a snail in its perspective. This meant that a straightforward shot won't work on it. He needed to shoot it when it was distracted, when it wasn't looking at him. But its faceless head staring directly at him made this extremely hard. It already knew that he and his drone could shoot a Unity gun. The injury on its shoulder and back made it remember the one who wounded it very clearly. So it was very wary of them at all times. It wanted to enact revenge. It shot towards Michael at incredible speeds, shooting down like a meteor. Thankfully, Michael still had one technique up his sleeve. He reached down into his pockets and retrieved a very special switch. The Unity creature arrived in front of him, with its hands raised above its head, ready to crush him into the ground. At the very last moment, he clicked the switch in his hands, releasing the hidden Unity beam in the iron block. The Unity creature slammed down its hand towards Michael's chest, before a single beam appeared between them. The expected slam didn't occur. An arm made out of Unity fell onto the ground beside Michael, before exploding into motes of differently colored lights. Michael cut off one of its arms with his Unity saber. He didn't even have to move his weapon and simply let the Unity creature's arm fall straight towards the blade. He wanted to take this opportunity to swing his Unity saber again towards the Unity creature, but it quickly retreated to the skies, holding the stump of its severed arm in pain. Michael waved his Unity saber in the air, challenging the Unity creature to charge towards him again. With this weapon in hand, the creature would find it hard to approach him without one of its limbs getting cut off. The Unity creature then released its grip from its stump and pointed it at Michael. The tip of its index finger began to glow with the same prismatic light as Michael's Unity gun. No way. In the next instant, a beam of light instantaneously shot towards Michael, hitting him in the shoulder. It burned a hole through his bones and muscle, leaving through the other side. He immediately conjured light mana again, healing the injury he sustained from the creature's Unity gun. Copied my spell? That's unfair. At least he could console himself with the fact that he could heal himself, while the Unity creature remained injured. But this still posed a problem. The Unity gun was far too fast for him to react to. Unlike the creature, he didn't have an almost instantaneous reaction time. ChatJK5. I can't react fast enough. Already on it, Michael. Creating an algorithm that predicts the Unity creature's shots. Completed. Suddenly, his vision changed as a new interface with grid lines everywhere, including the Unity creature. And just as the Unity creature pointed its index finger towards him, Michael suddenly saw a change in the interface, now with a dotted line that went from the Unity creature's finger towards his chest. On top of it was the words, 99% probability, the Unity gun was going to hit him in the chest. Knowing this information, he didn't have to react the moment it was shot. He could prepare for it. Then, the light in the Unity creature's finger reached a climax, releasing a burst of instantaneous light that shot towards Michael's chest, just as ChatJK5 predicted. And just as it was about to hit his torso, Michael raised his hand and positioned his Unity saber in a direct line of sight from the shot. The beam of light hit the Unity saber's blade, creating prismatic sparks that flew everywhere, before reflecting off and hitting the ground behind him. Michael stared at his weapon, a smile growing in his face. Perfect parry. That was one of his most beloved features in any single-player game that he played. It was extremely satisfying to see shots perfectly bounce back towards its shooter. It made him want to do the same to the Unity creature. Chapter 793, Unity Creature. The Unity creature raised its hands again, a shot building in its finger. Michael held his Unity saber in hand and readied himself for a perfect parry. Just then, ChatJK5 gave him another prediction with a 97% accuracy. Finally, the shot beamed towards him, and with a careful and precise movement, he swung his Unity saber upwards. The beam of prismatic light hit the blade perfectly in its center, before Michael continued with a follow-through that sent the beam shooting back towards its sender. The Unity creature tried to dodge its own attack, but was unable to come away unscathed in time. It hit its stomach, making it recoil backwards in pain. It was now hunched forwards, its prismatic body starting to dim. The Unity creature seemed extremely hurt, as if it was on the verge of its destruction. Michael nodded to himself, knowing that all he had to do was parry a few more shots and he could kill this Unity creature and finish the Obelix test. Unfortunately, the Unity creature didn't make that easy. Despite having its shot reflected back at it, The Unity creature readied up another shot of Unity gun aimed at Michael. It fired without a moment's hesitation. And thanks to ChatJK5's predictions, Michael was able to accurately deflect the shot back towards the Unity creature, aiming directly at its head. But this time, the Unity creature didn't make any gestures for escape. It simply raised its hand and waited for the reflected Unity shot to come towards him. And as it zoomed directly at its head, the Unity creature simply swatted the Unity beam downwards, reflecting it back and hitting one of the stacks of debris floating in the dark black skies. Michael pursed his lips. Damn, it's learning from all my moves. The Unity creature had been using all of Michael's techniques against him. He was able to injure the creature at first, but it would always find a way to either replicate his moves or have a way to counteract it. And with it having learned a perfect parry, Michael's choices became severely limited. Every shot of his would simply get reflected back at him, and they would get stuck in a constant loop of reflections until somebody made a mistake. Just then, the Unity creature finally made a move. It zoomed forwards, its hands stretched forwards as if it was going to pierce Michael's body with it. And while it was in the middle of this movement, it fired off a single shot of Unit gun. Michael could only react a half-beat later, positioning his Unity saber at an awkward spot. It successfully deflected the prismatic beam away from Michael's body, but was unable to reflect it back at its sender. It landed behind him, scorching the soil and creating a plume of dust that spread in the air. And while Michael's Unity saber was in this awkward spot after deflecting the shot, the Unity creature took that opportunity to throw a gut punch towards Michael. The punch landed, knocking the wind out of Michael. But just as the Unity creature was winding up for another punch, a beam of light pierced shot towards its head. It was able to dodge away, with the beam grazing past its cheeks. The two jumped backwards, creating separation. And without delay, Michael's injury from the gut punch immediately started healing as the light mana in the air gathered around his torso. The Unity creature was worse for wear despite the shot only grazing past its head. I can do this all day, Michael sneered at the Unity creature. And with that provocation, the Unity creature disappeared from his sight and reappeared above him, targeting the annoying drone that had shot him. It grasped onto the drone's Unity gun barrels with its only hand and yanked as hard as it could, trying to destroy the weapons that caused its injuries. Michael immediately fired a Unity gun at the Unity creature, hoping to force it to let go of the drone. But the Unity creature instead lowered its body and headbutted the prismatic beam downwards, deflecting it back towards Michael. The Unity gun shot pierced straight through the ground, with Michael nowhere to be seen. He reappeared behind the Unity creature, with his Unity saber in both hands. He swung it down, aiming for the creature's back. Finally, it let go of the drone and quickly turned around. It used its hand and swung it towards the Unity saber. As the two Unity weapons clashed, prismatic sparks emanated outwards. However, in a battle against two equally strong Unity powers, the one with the most speed would win. The Unity saber split in half, its upper part tumbling down into the ground before dissipating into motes of differently colored lights. Michael immediately retreated back, with his drone following just above him. He looked at the switch in his hands before quickly tossing it out and retrieving a new one from his pockets. And with a single click, a new Unity saber appeared in his hands. I told you, I can do this all day, he said. But as much confidence as he was trying to portray, he knew that this parity between them wouldn't last. Right now, they were evenly matched. But it won't be long before Michael started to lose his resources. The light mana in the air was limited. It wasn't a small amount, but it would run out eventually, meaning he wouldn't be able to heal his wounds forever. And second of all, his drone was starting to become worse for wear. With each contact it had with the Unity creature, its frames were getting more and more disintegrated to the point where it could malfunction if it got into contact with that creature for a little bit longer. It seemed that the Unity creature knew that and was actively targeting it now instead of him. I have one last gambit, he thought. I have to find the right opportunity or else the Unity creature will just adapt and copy my moves. After thinking about it some more, he decided to let the Unity creature do what it wanted. He let the drone fly away from him. The Unity creature immediately took the bait, rushing towards the flying object, intent on destroying the Unity gun underneath its frame. Michael, on the other hand, piloted the drone and subtly made one move. A compartment on the drone's underside suddenly opened up to reveal a much bigger barrel, one similar to that of the cannons that could be seen on ships. This was the Unity bomb, Michael's last trump card. The Unity creature seemed to have noticed this change in the drone. With the large cannon barrel pointed at its head, the Unity creature sensed the inherent danger coming from the drone and immediately tried to run away. Michael fired the Unity bomb. The Unity creature was able to run away for a few meters thanks to the Unity bomb's slow release, but as soon as it left the barrel and fell to the air, Michael immediately triggered its explosion. A large shockwave of pure destruction emanated from the Unity bomb, destroying all kinds of mana in the air. Chapter 794. Lesson learned. The explosion sent everything flying off into the dark abyss. Bits and pieces of debris floating in the dark skies crossed over the boundary of the island before instantly disappearing into nothingness. The Unity creature was fast, but it wasn't fast enough. It was laying on the ground, with its lower body completely missing after the explosion sent it crashing onto the very edge of the island. Its indomitable prismatic skin, which would have burned through anything it touched, was slowly melting, motes of light dispersing in the wind, as the effects of the bomb lingered on. The Unity creature tried to gather the melting mana in its body, but found no success. Could not heal itself. And even if it could, it would take a few more minutes before the mana in the air completely stabilized. Michael would not wait that long. He approached the Unity creature, each step the only thing echoing in the island. Otherwise, it was silent. Michael knew he won. He would just have to wait a few more seconds before the Unity creature completely melted into pure mana in the air. But he didn't. He approached carefully, his eyes completely focused on the missing lower part of its body. It was a perfect dissection, allowing him to see the inner workings of the Unity creature. And in his mind, ChatJK5 was furiously working out the calculations as it began to analyze the very nature of this Unity creature. How it was moving, how could it stay intact, and most of all, how it was made. He wanted to copy the Unity creature for himself. And just as he approached the Unity creature, it looked up at him with its faceless head and performed what could only be described as a snarl. This was a creature that knew that it was in its death throes. And in pure desperation, it raised its only hand and flung it towards Michael. With its body melting, the arm flew out of the Unity creature's shoulder socket cleanly and rocketed off towards Michael at an extremely fast pace. And in the air, the arm continued to melt off and began to form a perfect conical tip that was aimed straight at Michael. The Unity bomb was powerful. It negated all mana in the air for a few minutes. This meant that Michael should just be as vulnerable to the effects of the bomb as the Unity creature. But just as the arm was about to hit him, Michael flicked a switch in his chest. He paused the effects of the bomb on himself, allowing him to use magic. A Unity saber flashed beside him before he swung it in front of him, perfectly cutting the severed arm in half. It exploded into motes of light, becoming pure mana that dissolved in the air. The Unity creature laid on the ground, unable to even hold its upright with both of its hands gone. It looked up as Michael approached. "Thanks for the lesson," he said as a notification rang in his head. "Analyzation complete. You are now able to create your own Unity creature." Michael raised his hand, motes of mana immediately gathering at his palms. The beads of melting mana in the Unity creature's body began to float off from the ground and reach Michael's hands, forming into a revolving spherical ball made out of pure Unity mana. And suddenly, his head felt warm as a wave of information crashed through his head. ChatJK5 gave him the exact magic theory that led to the Unity creature's creation. And now, he was going to replicate it himself. Following the instructions in his head, he began to mold the Unity sphere in his hands. And with his other hand, he reached out and beckoned for the Unity creature to come towards him. The Unity creature's half-lifeless body floated up, its faceless head showing acceptance in the face of this new development. With one hand containing the molded Unity sphere, and the other controlling the half-body of the Unity creature, Michael clapped his hands together, mixing the two. The Unity creature would become the framework for his new creation. The rotating sphere of prismatic Unity shot towards the Unity creature, exploding into motes of light as it clashed onto its chest. Pure mana began to surround the Unity creature as Michael commanded them to start reforming its body. Motes of light gathered and bunched together, slowly forming the two missing arms on the creature. Michael spread his hands even further as he began to tap into the mana of the entire environment in this island. More and more mana began to flow towards the Unity creature, slowly rebuilding its body into something new, into something better. And as Michael went through this process, he began to understand why the designer of this obelisk made him go through the first test. It made him realize the importance of each individual mana element. Unity may be one of the strongest powers in the world, but it cannot be created without those basic elements. If he hadn't gone through that test, Michael wouldn't have thought to arrange the water mana in the Unity creature to become veins that supplied power. He wouldn't have known to put fire in the very fibers that made up the muscle structure of the Unity creature, nor earth for its skin and organs, nor air for the boundary that separated all mana structures to prevent explosion. Poison allowed the natural death and recycling of mana in the structure. Lightning bestowed power and movement, dark for the shadow that kept its form, and most importantly, the light that tied it all together to become life. And with the combination of all those systems, he brought into this world a new creature in the likeness of his own, a human. Finally, the Unity creature had been reformed, with its arms, feet, and head having so much more definition than before. And underneath the prismatic skin, one could see the outlines of a pair of eyes, a nose, a lips, ears, and even fingerprints on its hands. Then, an explosion. Prismatic shards flew outwards before dispersing into motes of mana that became part of the environment once again. Its job already finished. And once the light subsided, the Unity creature showed its true form. Underneath that prismatic skin was something entirely human. Michael floated up, staring at this new creature that he just created. It stared back at him, its eyes filled with curiosity. He had created a Unity creature in the form of himself. With its golden hair, its sharp good looks, this was a perfect copy. The only difference was that this one was made out of pure Unity. Its very body was made out of the most destructive power in the world. He raised his hand, and his copy raised its hand as well. From now on, he would be calling this as his Unity clone. Unity clone. This spell creates a perfect clone of the user made out of pure Unity. The user can control them as if it was their own body, as well as swap places with it at any time. Since it was made out of Unity, no magic nor ability power can stop this swap. Chapter 795. Unity Clone. Michael stared at his Unity clone with satisfaction. This new clone of his was extremely different from his shadow clones. One aspect was its strength. He saw firsthand how strong a Unity creature could be. Its speed was almost as instantaneous as a Unity gun, and its strength was as destructive as Unity itself. He could see this Unity clone going toe-to-toe against magnetics themselves. Its natural Unity body would be able to defend against most ability powers, rendering them useless. And according to ChatJK5, he could also swap places with his Unity clone at any time. Back when he was trapped in Kuno's underground castle, he couldn't leave because he couldn't contact his shadow clones. The very walls of that place was laced with ability power, allowing no communication between him and the mana on the outside world. But now, things were different. This clone was made out of Unity, the only power that could fight against ability powers. If he were trapped in the same situation again, then he'd be able to escape easily if he had planted his Unity clone somewhere outside. This is very useful. Just then, he heard the satisfying clinking sound coming from the obelisk. The first lock that had been fractured was now a whole piece, with its curving metal lock now twisted backwards. It was unlocked. This was a cause for celebration. Not only did Michael pass the test, but he was also able to steal a very powerful Unity clone from the obelisk. However, this didn't last long as he suddenly saw the next lock on the obelisk start pulsating with light. Michael's guesses came true. He had only passed the first test. There were 2 more to go. This test is brutal, he remarked. He didn't think anyone other than him would have passed against the Unity creature. But I guess that's why the bone says that only the worthy can get its inheritance. And just as he was thinking that, the beam of light on the obelisk suddenly got brighter and brighter as the timer on the lock reached its end. A figure burst forth from the light, its entire body basking in prismatic energy, before it crashed in front of the obelisk like a meteor. Michael stared at this new test from the obelisk and couldn't help but furrow his brows. After all, this figure was another Unity creature. It looked exactly the same as the one from before, with seemingly no difference whatsoever. Its entire body was clad in a prismatic light, standing on 2 feet and had 2 arms on its side. Even its head was faceless, giving Michael no indication as to what emotion this creature was feeling right now. It stared at him and Michael stared at him back. Michael raised his hand, his index finger glowing prismatic as he shot a Unity gun towards the new Unity creature. As the beam shot towards the Unity creature, it casually raised its hand and swatted the shot downwards, scorching nothing but the ground. Even though this Unity creature looked exactly the same as the last one, Michael felt even more danger facing this creature. He didn't know why, but it emanated a kind of strength that the Unity creature from before didn't. And suddenly, it moved. It disappeared from his sight, reappearing in front of him with its arms raised above its head. Michael felt a sense of déjà vu. This was the same attack that the Unity creature performed before. Having learned his lesson, he didn't attempt to defend himself with his prismatic shield. He simply swapped places with his Unity clone. His body began to be clad in a prismatic light as his body suddenly shifted with just the tiniest bit of vibration. And suddenly, the Unity creature was now facing a version of Michael who looked completely identical to himself, except for the blank expression on its face. The Unity creature brought down its hands towards Michael's clone, its hands clashing with the clone's defensive hands. Prismatic lights sparked upon contact, showing what would happen when 2 equal beings fought against each other. But just then, 2 beams of Unity shot from 2 different places at the same time, targeting the Unity creature's head. Michael and his drone fired off a Unity gun towards the Unity creature, who reacted by raising its hands on the side of its head. The 2 beams hit the creature's forearms before ricocheting outwards, unharmed. But with its hands defending its head, this left its body completely vulnerable. Michael's clone pushed its finger towards the Unity creature's chest, with a prismatic light emanating off from its hands. Then, the beam shot off, hitting the Unity creature point blank, the beam leaving out from its back. The Unity creature stumbled backwards, smoke still coming from the entry and exit wounds in its chest. It walked backwards before a stone caused it to trip, causing it to land on its behind. Michael swapped places with his clone again and slowly approached the Unity creature. He looked at the Unity creature and extended his hand forward, commanding the mana in the air to come towards him. With the Unity creature on its last legs, he hoped to use its body as a frame to create another Unity clone. With his Unity saber in hand, a single swing towards its head would finish the job. He gripped the switch in his hands and decisively swung it with force, decapitating the Unity creature. Its head fell lifelessly on the floor, rolling forwards until it suddenly exploded into pure motes of light that joined the mana in the surroundings. Its body turned lifeless, mana slowly melting off of its body. Michael raised his hands, ready to control the mana in his surroundings and create another Unity creature in his image. And just as he was about to do so, he caught a glimpse of the gunshot wound on its chest. He saw a glint. That wasn't supposed to be there. Chapter 796. Salt in the Wound. Michael stared at the Unity creature's chest and saw something he would have never thought was possible. Armed with curiosity, he held out his hands and focused on that glistening object buried underneath the melting body of the Unity creature. Its chest started to vibrate before a single metallic drop of liquid slowly floated towards Michael, its speed getting faster the closer it got to him. And as it made contact with the natural mana in the air, the drop of liquid began to emanate a pure white fire, something that would destroy anything it touched. There was no mistaking it. This was a Godforge piece. And as he beckoned, more and more drops of Godforge pieces continued to float towards him. Its attraction to someone of his nature would not let anything hinder its journey. He couldn't believe it. This Unity creature had a Godforge piece in its chest. He didn't even think it was possible. These were two directly opposing powers that should have no overlap with each other. The very definition of an ability power was that it could alter the reality of the world and even render mana useless. At least that's what he always thought. But now, he was seeing first-hand evidence of the two powers working together to form whatever this creature was. The creator of this obelisk was someone from the ancient era. Does that mean that back in those days mana and ability powers were intertwined together? The more he thought about it, the more it made sense. Why was he a natural magnetic, someone who commanded control over the Godforge pieces from their natural attraction towards him? It was because he could wield all 8 mana, and therefore had the power to use Unity. And as he observed the Godforge pieces floating in the air and shooting towards his chest, he suddenly realized something. That white fire that surrounded the liquid, that was Unity. He slapped his own forehead for only now being cognizant of that fact. He used to just simply accept it without asking any questions why it was surrounded by Unity. Unity and ability powers were intricately linked to each other. That was a fact. As for how, he still didn't know the answer to that question. Not only that, but there was one more important question that remained. If it had these Godforge pieces, then was it possible that this creature was a magnetic? He suddenly remembered that feeling he got as he laid eyes on this dying creature. He sensed a different power, which he now understood to be the Godforge pieces in its heart. But it still didn't make sense. If it was a magnetic, then why didn't it use any of its abilities to defend itself? It died without exhibiting any signs of an awakening whatsoever. He was consumed by curiosity. He wanted to know if this Unity creature had the power to wield those Godforge pieces like a human, or was it simply just a container? It could very well be a deliberate design from the creator of this obelisk as a reward to whoever defeated the Unity creature. But no matter how much he speculated, he would now never know the answer. As the last bit of Godforge pieces left the Unity creature's body, most of its Unity had already melted away and dispersed into the air. There was nothing left for him to study. If he waited any longer, then the Unity creature would fully dissolve into its most basic elements. At the very last second, he raised his hand, mana gathering at his palms, before commanding them to surround the dead body of the Unity creature. Motes of light clumped together as the injuries on the creature's body started to mend. Even its decapitated head was slowly growing back from its stump. It wasn't long before a new body had formed. Michael now had 2 Unity clones by his side. But despite this useful acquisition, he couldn't bring himself to celebrate. ChatJK5, please tell me you were able to figure out how the Unity creature was able to put a Godforge piece in its heart. Unfortunately not, Michael. I was not able to observe how its body worked since it had already died instantly after you decapitated its head. Pouring salt in the wound. Yeah, I get it, I made a mistake. It's not your fault, Michael. Even if I was able to see how those Godforge pieces were placed, I would have no idea how they would work in a Unity body system. Michael regretted killing the Unity creature so easily. He wished that it had put up more of a fight so that it could have had the chance to use its ability power, if it even had any. Come on. Please tell me that there's another Unity creature that I have to defeat, he begged the obelisk. Just then, a very unsatisfying ding resounded out from the obelisk as the second lock lit up the same way as the first one. Then it cracked, signaling its completion. He completed the second test of the obelisk. Damn it, he cursed. This was perhaps the only time in his life where he was asking for more of a challenge. The obelisk's designer probably didn't expect its challenger to have a mithril relic drone and the ability to copy a Unity creature. The fight got extremely one-sided. Ugh. How many kilos did I get from the Unity creature? Only 1 kilo, ChatJK5 answered despondently. The Unity creature was only in the first stage of the body formation realm, which was very weak compared to his 7th-stage cultivation. I just hope that the third and last test of the obelisk gives me the same test but a lot more challenging. Just as he said that to himself, the obelisk suddenly glowed a red light that reached the high black skies above. It emanated a kind of danger that manifested as an invisible shockwave that coursed through the entire island, as if answering Michael's challenge. Michael readied himself as 3 figures clad in Unity shot out from the obelisk's red beam of light, landing on the ground with a thud. His eyes widened with happiness as he saw his opponents have that same prismatic glitter surrounding their body. They were Unity creatures. And as a greeting to his new test subjects, he raised his hand and fired a single shot of Unity gun. The Unity creature at the center of their formation raised its hand and punched the beam at the perfect time, sending the shot back towards its sender. Michael swung his Unity saber, prismatic sparks flying off as it met the shot. However, his hand started to tremble as he tried to parry it back. The power embedded into this shot was a lot more powerful than his original one. His guard was broken as he had to deflect the shot into the ground. These 3 new Unity creatures were a lot stronger than before, that was for sure. But he didn't despair. Instead, he thought of this as a wonderful opportunity. He was going to find out their secret no matter what. Chapter 797, Learning Creature. 2 Unity creatures suddenly disappeared from Michael's sight, only to reappear right in front of him with their arms raised above their heads. But just then, Michael's Unity clones intercepted them, blocking their attacks before countering with a swift kick in the chest. The 2 Unity creatures flew backwards, their feet skidding in the ground before they stopped. Michael was wise to their moves. He had already fought these Unity creatures 2 times already, and their starting moves never changed. It was always a slam with both their hands, which was easy to counter once he knew what to expect. After that, he commanded his Unity clones to pursue their targets. Both clones disappeared, only to reappear behind the Unity creatures. The tips of their index fingers were glowing as they fired off a shot of Unity gun. The creatures raised their hands and reflected the shots before shooting off towards the clones. And in the distance, they began to clash in hand-to-hand combat, sparks flying off as Unity fought against Unity. They were all evenly matched, which was exactly what Michael wanted. Now, he was left alone with 1 Unity creature, which made it that much easier to plan for his experiments. But first, he used his drone vision to look at the Unity creatures. He wanted to see if this one had Godforge pieces in its chest as well. Unfortunately, the fact that the creature was made entirely out of Unity made this extremely hard to perceive. Its entire body was glowing prismatic, which made it hard to see if its chest was glowing red-hot orange. He piloted the drone to move forwards to take a closer look, but this seemed to have incited the creature to attack. It lunged towards the flying drone, trying to grab it with both hands. Although the drone was already damaged from the previous tests, Michael decided to let it get captured for just a single brief instant. The Unity creature grasped at the drone's frame, pushing on it with both hands trying to crush it. And in that moment, Michael finally got a close look at the creature's chest. There, buried in the blinding light of Unity, he saw a tiny sliver of orange glow in its heart. It had Godforge pieces. Once he confirmed this fact, he immediately commanded the drone to shrink itself, its size becoming as small as a bird. And using this chance, the drone flew off of the Unity creature's grasp and returned to Michael's side. It was able to escape before any real damage was done to the drone. This Unity creature has Godforge pieces. I assume the other 2 have one as well. Now, how am I going to make it use its ability power? The only way he could think of was to fight it normally, which was quite easy to do. The Unity creature disappeared from his sight, only to reappear at his side, its fingers glowing with power as it tried to shoot a Unity gun at point blank on the side of his chest. Its speed was comparable to that of a Unity beam itself. Michael had no chance of dodging. But thanks to his previous dealings with the creature, he didn't have to. He was already familiar with all of its moves. He twisted his body aside, elbowing the Unity gun pointed at his torso before swinging his Unity saber at its arm. The Unity creature then used its other hand to grab the hand wielding the Unity saber. Michael's skin immediately started to burn from contact with Unity. But just then, a beam of Unity shot at the creature's chest, making it recoil backwards. It looked up with its faceless head towards the drone that injured it. It then raised its hand, intending to catch it once again. But Michael lunged his Unity Saber forward while it was distracted. The creature was caught off guard, with the Unity Saber hitting its shoulder before it was able to brush it aside with its hand. It tried to counterattack by taking advantage of Michael's overextended hand. But just as it was about to lunge, a beam of Unity shot at its hand, completely shattering it into pure motes of light. The Unity creature recoiled in pain, but Michael didn't give it any chance and swung his Unity Saber, severing its other hand. He didn't need the hands in order to study the creature. With a well-coordinated attack with his drone, dealing with this Unity creature became extremely easy. If the fight continued on like this, it would only be a matter of time until Michael ultimately killed it off just like the last time. But he didn't want to, yet. He still needed to find out why it had a Godforge piece in its chest. Was it purely for reward purposes? Even at an extreme disadvantage, the Unity creature still wasn't using its ability power. If it had one, then it should have used it by now. And as he was contemplating this question, it suddenly dawned on him. All this time, the Unity creature had been using the Unity gun and the perfect parry like with his Unity Saber. Those were his techniques. It was only when he used them against the creature that it finally started using them against him. The Unity creature is learning from me, he realized. Going by that logic, this meant that they would only awaken their ability power once they copied it from him. He reached down in his pockets and retrieved a single switch. He was about to throw it towards the injured Unity creature when he stopped himself in time. If my guess is correct, then this means that all the Unity creatures would awaken their ability powers once I showed mine. That was not ideal. Once he unleashed this power, it could very well turn the tides towards the Unity creature's side. ChatJK5 do you need? I only need one intact specimen to study, ChatJK5 answered instantly. Say no more, he said as he swung his Unity Saber and decapitated the Unity creature instantly. Immediately, drops of Godforge pieces flowed towards him and joined the rest in his heart. And without even looking back, he commanded the mana in the air to reform the dead Unity creature behind him. A few seconds later, a new clone emerged following close behind him. Then, he turned his attention towards the other two Unity creatures fighting his clones. The Unity creatures were winning by a slight margin, but his clones were keeping them at bay. He picked his target and walked towards it. Just as the Unity creature was about to punch his clone, he raised his hand and fired off a shot of Unity gun, hitting its shoulder and breaking its stance. His clone immediately lunged forwards and brought down both its hands towards the creature's head, bashing it downwards. Crashed onto the ground, right in front of Michael's feet, and without a moment's hesitation, he stabbed his Unity Saber in its head, killing it instantly. Godforge pieces floated up towards his body, while mana began to reform the creature into another clone. And finally, there was one of them left. Chapter 798, Mirror on a Puddle. Michael stared at the Unity creature, its posture one of fear and anxiousness. It looked around itself and realized that it was the only one left of its kind. The others turned into a clone that were now looking towards it with the intention to do the same thing that had been done to them. It raised its hand, its index finger glowing with the power of unity, as it aimed it at Michael's clone in the hopes of creating some separation. But just as the prismatic beam was about to unleash its power, a single iron block tumbled through the air and landed directly on its chest. The Unity creature turned towards Michael, seeing the visage of a futuristic, mechanical figure that was missing its head and its lower body. Despite that, its golden armor made out of nanoparticles shone with an oppressive power. For a second, the Unity creature stood there, its faceless head staring at Harbinger. It tilted its head slightly, seemingly noticing something within the diva. But just then, the switch now lodged in its chest finally took effect. An invisible cocoon of weaved ability power threads emanating from Michael's chest enveloped its entire body. As the time-stop effect of the switch was about to hold the creature's momentum into a complete freeze, its unity-filled body suddenly burst out into a white fire, completely burning the cocoon it had been encased in. And as the threads of ability power burned in the air, some of its fibers were suddenly sucked into the creature's chest. Michael's eyes widened as he saw this. It's happening. He immediately flew his drone closer, hoping he could observe the process in which the Unity creature awakened its ability power. With his drone vision, he saw his own thread of ability power land on the Godforge pieces in the creature's chest. Then, it suddenly started to glow red-hot as it began to churn, ability power starting to empower the creature. Michael stood there and watched as a familiar image started to form above the Unity creature's head. The golden aura that surrounded it, the sleek metallic finish on the armor, the pulsating lights, the holographic projections. There was no mistaking it. This was Harbinger. KSK. The least it could have done was copy my awesome aura. Harbinger complained. That's you, he said to Harbinger as he looked at the diva above the creature. Copied you. Look closely. It's just a projection of me. A mere image of an image. It's like seeing me in the reflection of a mirror in the reflection of a puddle. After the initial shock, Michael was able to observe the diva with much better clarity. And just like Harbinger said, although the image above the creature copied every single feature in Harbinger's body, it failed to reproduce that intangible aura that surrounded the diva. It felt two-dimensional. But still, it's amazing that it could copy a diva like this. Then, a new question arose in his mind. Can it copy my ability to? He didn't have to wait long as the Unity creature raised its hand, beckoning something in the ground to rise up. The soil underneath their feet started to shake, small rocks levitating off the ground. Then, a single chunk of pure iron ore suddenly emerged from underneath, causing bits and pieces of rock and soil to explode outwards. With this chunk of iron ore floating in front of it, the Unity creature closed its hands as if crushing something in his palms. The iron ore started folding upon itself, as if an invisible blacksmith was hammering upon it with a million strikes. It wasn't long before the iron turned into a familiar shape. A switch. Michael was extremely fascinated with what he saw. It was a perfect replication of his ability power. However, its power was very weak compared to his incomparable to the real thing. It was probably because of two things. First, just like Harbinger said, this Unity creature couldn't perfectly replicate everything about a diva, which makes its ability power a little bit diminished from the real thing. Secondly, its cultivation was only equal to that of a second-stage body formation magnetic. Still, that's my switch. Could these Unity creatures copy any ability power that it comes across? Just as he was having that thought, the Unity creature punched out its hands, causing the switch to shoot towards the drone. It landed perfectly on its frame, and immediately, a thread of ability power unspooled out of the creature's God-forged pieces and began to create a cocoon around the drone. As soon as the last thread was weaved, the drone suddenly froze in place as if it was hovering in the air. Yet, its propellers were static, unmoving. Amazing! Michael praised, before snapping his fingers. A satisfying click resounded out of the drone's frame as a much bigger spool of ability power thread shot out of Michael's chest and wrapped around the cocoon on the drone, creating another cocoon. Suddenly, the drone's propellers started revving up as it regained all of its momentum. Michael always had a switch stored in his drone. All he had to do to counteract the Unity creature's switch was to pause its own pause, negating its effects completely. This was basically a battle between a second stage and a seventh stage magnetic. Unless they were Michael, the results would be obvious. The drone flew up, prismatic light gathering at the barrels underneath its frame before shooting at the Unity creature in its chest. The aftershock of its own ability power getting destroyed left it vulnerable for a moment, which the drone perfectly took advantage of. The shot landed on its chest, creating a shallow hole that exposed the metallic object buried in its body. Michael was now looking at the Godforged pieces in the creature's body, the metal still pumping ability power in the creature's body. ChatJK5. I'm tired of this Unity creature always copying my moves. It's time we do the same. Understood, Michael. Analyzing the Unity creature's God-forged pieces, his trusty AI assistant began observing the creature's innards, trying to see how the God-forged pieces worked in tandem with the Unity that surrounded it. Just then, the creature suddenly jumped backwards, fear written all over its faceless head. Just sit still, Michael said as he gestured with his head for his clones to follow. All 4 clones disappeared, only to appear surrounding the Unity creature from all sides. And with swift coordinated movement, they lunged forwards and each grabbed a limb from the Unity creature. It struggled under their hands, but was unable to escape. It tried to fire off a Unity gun from its fingers, but Michael's clones simply pointed the gun away from their bodies, the prismatic beam shooting off into the darkness void surrounding the island. Then, Michael approached the Unity creature, and with an apathetic voice asked ChatJK5, "Okay, what do you need?" "I need to see." ChatJK5 began giving him a list of experiments for him to do to the Unity creature, and he complied without any question. If anyone were to see this, they would immediately feel sorry for the Unity creature. Chapter 799 Magnetic Unity Clone. Analyzation complete. Magic theory acquired. Michael couldn't hide his excitement as ChatJK5 said those words he'd been waiting for. Suddenly, a wave of information washed over his brain as ChatJK5 gave him the magic theory behind the Unity creature's creation. In an instant, he knew all the technical movements and magic placement he needed to do in order to implement Godforged pieces in his clones. Placing those destructive metals inside an equally destructive container using an intricate use of the 8 elements became second nature to him. It all looked simple. He looked down at the corpse of the Unity creature. He killed it after completing all of the experiments ChatJK5 needed. Its body was now slowly melting as the Unity in its body began to disperse. Usually, he would first absorb the Godforged pieces in its body before turning it into a clone. But this time he left it alone. He raised his hand, all 8 mana gathering at his palms as a clump of prismatically colored motes of light. Once there was enough mana, he gently pushed it towards the Unity creature's chest, mending the hole in its chest. As he did, he implanted a white magic circle containing the magic theory ChatJK5 gave to him. Immediately, the mana clump disassembled into individual motes of light. It dispersed, covering the Unity creature's body according to the instructions left behind by the magic circle. The Unity creature's body slowly lifted upright, its body levitating off the ground by a few inches. Colorful lights rotated around the creature, slowly getting faster and faster until it created a prismatic sphere that obscured its entire body. And as the spell reached its end, the sphere exploded, motes of light returning back into the environment. What was left was no longer a creature, but a man. It was a perfect clone of Michael, just like the 4 other clones beside him. Except, this one had an indescribable aura around itself. And with his drone vision, the reason became obvious. Its chest was now glowing orange, making it look like an ordinary magnetic cultivator. "It's a success," he rejoiced. And without missing a beat, he turned towards his other clones and controlled them to come closer. Right now, he had an extra 7 kilos of Godforge pieces. 6 from the clones he just defeated, and 1 from the previous test. He put his hands on his chest and pulled it forward. Slowly drops of a metallic liquid began to exit out of his chest, immediately becoming endowed with a white flame upon contact with the outside air. As it floated in front of him, he spread out his hands, causing these drops of Godforge pieces to separate into different paths and eventually landing onto his Unity clones. As soon as these drops entered the clone's chest, a white magic circle appeared underneath their feet as Michael's magic began to change their very structure, allowing space in their artificial hearts for a Godforge piece. Their chests glowed golden for a brief second, before dimming. They were now officially magnetic Unity clones. He decided to return the Godforge pieces he obtained from the creatures, turning the other 2 clones into a second stage body formation magnetic, and the other a first stage. Now, he had 3 clones in the second stage and 1 in the first stage. But since he lacked more, his very first clone remained without a Godforge piece. "I'm going to keep this normal clone as a failsafe," he decided. "It's reassuring to know that I can teleport to safety whenever I want." As for the other 4 clones, he had still yet to decide what he wanted to do with them. If he got an excess of Godforge pieces, he would certainly give it to them. But for now, his priority was the Dragonborns, so he would give them the Godforge pieces if he had it. But of course, in order to have a failsafe, he needed to get out of this place first. Just as he was thinking that, a satisfying ding resounded from the obelisk as the final lock finally shattered. "I finally completed the tests." The designer for this obelisk probably never thought their tests would get completed so easily. They were supposed to get harder after each completed lock, but it turned out to be the complete opposite. Michael had the hardest time facing the first Unity creature, suffering grievous wounds multiple times. But after learning how to create a Unity creature himself, things became exponentially easier. Just then, the beam of light on the obelisk emitted an incredibly bright flash that encompassed everything, blinding Michael completely. He had to close his eyes, but kept his clones close to him for protection. A few seconds later, the blinding light subsided. As he opened his eyes, he saw the obelisk still standing proudly in front of him. The ability power threads that were sewed to create the locks had disappeared completely. Now, there was nothing inscribed onto the obelisk. Instead, there were these cracks that propagated all around its surface, as if it was on the verge of ruin. The golden streaks that were around it had disappeared, leaving large creases on its surface that caused instability within the obelisk at a critical point. The whole island started to shake, with bits and debris starting to fall off of the obelisk. Michael stood back far enough for safety, but close enough to observe. The quaking intensified as each piece that fell onto the ground further exacerbated the shaking in the island. Dust burst out from the ground, obscuring the structure as it completely crumbled onto the ground. Then silence. It was only a few seconds later when the dust finally subsided that Michael could finally see the end result of the obelisk's destruction. Scattered all around were large debris of obsidian-like stone. But underneath all of this rubble, he could see a faint white glow that beckoned him to come closer. It was a power that was familiar yet strange at the same time. He started walking towards it. Instinctually, he knew that whatever this was not dangerous. He didn't know how he knew that, but the power that emanated from it didn't emanate any kind of hostility. It was a different kind of power. If Michael could describe it, then he would say that it was like the difference between a fighter and a scholar. A fighter was powerful because of his strength, while a scholar was powerful because of their intellect. And he felt that the object underneath all of this rubble was like that of a scholar. It was powerful, yet weak. As he scaled the debris, the white glow got brighter, as if sensing the approach of someone it considered worthy. Then finally, peeking out from the debris, he saw it. It was a cube, floating on its pointed edge, slowly rotating and giving off that white glow. Michael then observed it with his drone vision, trying to see if it was clad in ability power. And as he entered his vision, a blinding light pierced through the screen and physically reached out into his eyes. If he didn't exit out of his drone vision in time, his eyes would have been burned. Chapter 800, Strange Cube. Ah, Michael groaned, massaging his eyes. What the hell was that? That thing's designed so that no one can look at it, Harbinger said. Not even those above the nascent spirit realm can pry its secrets unharmed. Michael was surprised to hear such a description from Harbinger. It seemed that the secrets hidden within the strange cube were incredibly profound, something that wasn't meant for the eyes of mortals and magnetics alike. He was incredibly lucky that all he got was sore eyes after inadvertently trying to figure out the secret to the universe. What even is this and why is it so secretive? Harbinger shrugged. No idea. ChatJK5. Any ideas? You don't need to ask her. If I don't know anything, then she certainly won't. ChatJK5 went silent, which was atypical given how much she hated Harbinger. See? She doesn't know anything. TSK. You cannot be more mistaken, idiot robot. ChatJK5 responded. Michael, I was able to ascertain a certain hidden coded message within the cube. Harbinger's insults prompted ChatJK5 to step up her game. Ho? You're calling me that, you buy? Michael immediately muted Harbinger. What kind of message? Suddenly, a new window appeared in his vision, showing the subtle details in his surroundings. All around the floating cube were the debris and chunks from the crumbled obelisk. Upon first glance, the way these chunks shattered and created debris looked typical of the way that a normal stone structure would collapse. Some turned into powder, most into slabs and blocks. But then Michael remembered. This place had no gravity. There were already collapsed structures floating in the dark skies even before he got here. So, if the obelisk were to truly crumble in this zero-G environment, then it should have spread apart in all directions. It shouldn't have fallen apart in the ground. There was only one explanation for this. The placement for these debris was deliberate. No normal person would be able to decipher this puzzle so easily. But as expected, ChatJK5's incredible processing power was able to take in all of these details into her database and churn out all the hidden patterns that its designer left for them. Suddenly, those points of interest lit up in his vision, before a line was drawn from their positions towards the floating cube and intersecting in the middle. And now, a new pattern emerged from those lines. Michael's eyes widened. In front of him, he saw a brain, with the points of interest becoming the neurons that made up the entire system in a human mind. A brain. It seems that this cube is some sort of central processing unit for a magical system. That was the only logical explanation that he and ChatJK5 could come up with. It explained that feeling of deep knowledge it had when he observed the cube for the first time. Why would they put this here? Clearly, this entire thing with the obelisk had been an arduous test to see if he was worthy or not. And once he showed his worthiness, it should have given him a great reward for all of his troubles. This didn't seem like a reward. He didn't even know what to do with this. Curious, he allowed one of his Unity clones to approach the cube. He deployed the only clone who didn't have a Godforge piece in its heart so that they wouldn't be wasted if something bad happened. The Unity clone walked forward with no hesitation and bent down to touch the cube. As soon as it did, the cube lit up in a golden light, spinning 2 times faster than it did before. But a few seconds later, the golden light subsided and its rotation returned to a normal pace. After that, nothing happened. Michael waited for a few more minutes to be sure, but as far as he could tell, nothing happened to the cube nor his clone. However, something must have happened or else the cube wouldn't have reacted that way. He just didn't know what. It was very hard to be perceptive when he couldn't use his drone vision. So, he had to rely on his own senses to decipher this new puzzle. Next, he tried to have one of his magnetic Unity clones approach the cube. And just like before, as soon as the clone touched the cube, a golden light emanated from its core and spun 100 times per second, subsiding only a few seconds later. So there's no difference between a magnetic and a non-magnetic clone. They both elicited the same reaction. After a few more experiments, he found out that each clone could only induce a reaction from the clone once. Multiple touches had no results. I guess it's time for me to touch it myself. Just like last time, the obelisk only started its test once he personally made contact with its surface. Maybe this was the same. I wouldn't mind new tests, honestly. As long as I get more clones at the end of it. With the white cube right in front of him, he couldn't help but squint his eyes. He knew his eyes would only get burned if he looked at it through his drone's vision, but he didn't want to take that chance. His hands slowly approached the cube, his hands gingerly making contact with the edges of the cube. The strange floating object stopped rotating, his grasp halting its momentum. But it didn't light up. As soon as he let go, the cube continued to rotate as it did before. Why is it not reacting? It didn't make sense why his clones elicited a response from the cube while he didn't. He thought this was an inheritance meant for him since he was the one who defeated the test. Yet, the cube basically rejected him. Is it because the clones are a spell? Does this cube only react to magic? Normally, throwing magic into an ancient powerful object was nothing less than suicide. But in this occasion, he was willing to try it. He started with a simple fireball spell and let it gently graze past the cube's edges. Nothing happened. He tested the other elements, and none of them elicited a reaction as well. It was a fruitless endeavor, but at least now, he knew that the cube wouldn't explode even if it had magic thrown directly towards it. Is it Unity? He raised his hand, finger emitting a prismatic light as he shot the Unity gun towards the cube's center. The Unity beam ricocheted off of its edges and into the ground, burning a deep hole. It didn't work. The cube didn't light up even once. Even his Unity saber elicited no reaction. So it's only my clones? No matter how he looked at it, none of this made any sense. He was starting to get annoyed. He spent more time trying to elicit a reaction from the cube than finishing the obelisk's test itself. He had half a mind to simply take the cube into his pockets and leave this place now, trying to procrastinate solving this puzzle. But just as he was at his wit's end, ChatJK5 suddenly had an idea. Michael, may I make contact with the cube? Chapter 801 Hack into the Cube. Michael stopped for a second, considering the idea before shaking his head. I don't think that's a good idea. You know that. ChatJK5 could have tried to hack into the cube the first time he touched it. But he didn't. She knew just how dangerous that thing was. He already learned his lesson trying to peek at the secrets of the cube with his drone vision. He almost lost his eyes. He could only imagine what kind of defenses the cube had in store for those trying to break through and hack its systems. Worst case scenario, ChatJK5 could perish completely. Don't worry, Michael. I can separate the system from your consciousness. If something bad happens, you won't get affected, she assured. That's not the problem. You're important to me, ChatJK5. I can't let you endanger your life for this. Kukuku. Good riddance if that's the case. Come on, Michael. Let her do it. Although this cube was extremely interesting, probably containing something profound within the mysteries of the world, Michael wasn't willing to sacrifice one of his greatest allies to obtain it. It simply wasn't worth the risk. He could fulfill all of his goals without this cube, but he couldn't do it without his good old AI partner. I have calculated the odds. There is only a 30% chance of the worst-case scenario happening. That's 30% too much, he replied. Even though he had already put his foot down and said no, ChatJK5 wasn't willing to let this go. She felt an incredible sense of duty for Michael and for herself. Please trust me. Michael's eyebrows raised. This was the first time that ChatJK5 wanted to do something that he didn't want to do. She always heeded his words without any questions and hesitations. But now, she was adamant in doing something that he didn't want her to do. She was being independent. He sighed. You're being more rebellious with each software update. He felt like he was seeing a daughter start to go off on her own and discover who she really was. It was heartwarming and sad at the same time. Fine. I trust you know what you're doing. Of course, Michael. I could never let you go off in this world all on your own with Harbinger by your side. He'll only lead you to ruin. Why you? Michael approached the cube once again, both his hands grasping at the edges. It stopped rotating, but remained floating in the air. Okay, go. A cool sensation flowed from his brain and spread towards his veins as ChatJK5 began to reach out into the cube. Usually, ChatJK5 could search and analyze a book or a magic spell in an instant after making contact with it. She could penetrate through its systems like a virus, taking in all of the information that she could and taking it back to Michael's brain. But this time, she took it slow. She was careful. She treated this as if it was war. Her opponent was an impenetrable fortress guarded by elite warriors on all sides. Its walls were tall and wide, almost impossible to scale as innumerable archers rained down fire from above. They had cannons, they had guns, they had all the anti-siege weapons in their arsenal to repel any forces that tried to conquer their territory. There was a sense of confidence within the cube, as if it knew that nothing could go through its defenses. Meanwhile, ChatJK5 was akin to a one-man army. She was a simple warrior looking up at the tall walls of this territory with ambitions to conquer it. But it was impossible. Much grander armies have tried and failed. If she were to simply charge ahead, she would die in an instant, her last vision being a million arrows raining down upon her. The other plausible way was to sneak in inside. Unfortunately, her opponents had another fortress underground, and an army of eagles soaring the skies. There was no way of creeping inside without them knowing. No ordinary warrior could go through this foolproof defense. But fortunately, she wasn't a warrior. She wasn't from the medieval ages. She was an AI assistant with profound knowledge only found from a much advanced technological race. This was her advantage. She used sonar, geological mapping, heat detection, and every other technological advantage to pry the secrets of this impenetrable fortress. But she only had one shot. She needed to push through in one fell swoop, or else it wouldn't be enough to see through their defenses. With Michael still holding the cube still, ChatJK5 readied her attacks. Then in an instant, she fired it all. Immediately, the cube burst out in a blinding golden light. The intensity of this light caused Michael to feel an extreme searing pain in his skin, especially the fingers holding onto the cube. He immediately let it go, and crawled backwards with his eyes closed tightly. A few seconds later, the heat in his body subsided. He slowly opened his eyes, seeing the cube floating off the ground, still rotating as if nothing even happened. He immediately turned to his subconscious, calling out to ChatJK5. "Are you okay?" During the moment of the explosion of light, he felt a sharp pain in the back of his head, as if something had snapped. He immediately thought of the worst thing, and as the seconds passed and ChatJK5 remained silent, his worries only deepened. ChatJK5. When he tried to bring up the system interface, he saw nothing but static in his vision. The words were still there, but it was slightly glitching and slowly being warped from the visual noise. Just then, a single text window appeared. I'm fine." Michael immediately sat upright. ChatJK5, what happened? When I made contact with the cube, it immediately tried to cast me out. It felt as if the entire weight of the universe was bearing down on me. Are you fine? I will be. The reaction from the cube caused the system to malfunction. A little bit. It will take some time to solve the bugs in the code, but there is no permanent damage. He breathed a sigh of relief. That brief moment when he thought he'd lost ChatJK5 was the scariest moment of his life. He didn't want to experience that again. The cube is much more complex than I realized. Its secrets are far too large for me to properly comprehend, but I was able to catch a glimpse. A glimpse? Yes, I was able to decipher what the cube is supposed to do. Why the clones elicited a reaction. Michael gulped. This cube, it's a connector. Just like the clue said, it's a brain. It allows systems to connect with each other and communicate. He frowned. What does that mean? Systems communicating? In this case, it's Unity communicating. It allows Unity to be able to talk to each other through a different dimension. This immediately caught his attention. Tell me more, ChatJK5. How does Unity talk to each other? This does not work on humans, but only on objects and spells. That's the reason why it didn't react to you. Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today.